Birds on Better Sports Network.
Football is back, baby. Welcome to the season. It is finally time. What we've been waiting for what seems like an eternity. But it's back. And I get it. Nobody we really care about is going to play tonight. Yeah, maybe there's two of you out there holding out hope that Zach Wilson plays his way out of New York and gets a shot to replace some other low-level quarterback. Let's be real. I think Zach Wilson is just a notch above. Who's the Rosen guy? I even forget him now. Josh Rosen. That's right. Josh Rosen. But football's back. I had hoped to give you a better update on the game. I see it's 6-0. But unfortunately, as I logged in tonight and set up my TV to watch the game and finish prepping for the show, lo and behold, my cable provider, DirecTV, God bless them, they do a lot of great things for me, but they're having a squabble with my local provider of NBC. So, alas, I had to listen to it on audio as we headed up to the start of the show, and I won't be able to keep too good a track during the show as I'm talking. So we're not really going to do a lot of playing audio. Yeah, that's right, Sedated Fork. I don't think I'm missing anything either, other than the fact that it's football, and football is back, and this is getting us started. It's where we have we've got, redraft leagues are getting ready to draft. Dynasty leagues that have been drafting should be wrapping up. Rookie drafts should all be over. I actually have a rookie draft that just started yesterday. I gotta say I held out so long for one reason and one reason only, is I had the first, the second, and the fifth pick on a rebuilding team. I also had the 11th and 12th. Peter would be proud of me on the 11th and 12th pick. I started out, I went Bijan at number 1. Yes, it's a super flex, but I went Bijan at 1. I went Anthony Richardson at 2. I need a quarterback. I'm rebuilding, so I'm willing to play for the upside. So I went Anthony Richardson at 2. I was at 107 and decided after Stroud and Bryce Young went off the board, I'm like, you know what? Running back is a big need for me. I went ahead and made a trade. I moved the 107, and I believe 2 second-round picks, if I remember correctly. This trade actually happened like 3 weeks ago. The draft started and then stopped. And so I moved the 107 and 2 second-round picks and went up to 105 so I could draft Jahmyr Gibbs. So I'm sitting on Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Javonte Williams as my top 3 running backs in this Dynasty League. And as somebody who's been a noted tight end hater, don't draft rookie tight ends. Let them work and see who's going to develop and then go get them. No, I didn't go get Dalton Kincaid. He did go at the 107 to the guy I traded. I traded that pick for the 105. But at 111 and 112, I went Michael Mayer and Sam Laporta. To me, it felt like, my options were Zay Flowers, who's been getting a lot of run. I like the press I'm hearing from Zay Flowers. But it's still Baltimore. I don't know how sold I am on their passing volume. We'll touch on that in camp news a little bit later. And the other option was Jonathan Mingo. I like Mingo, but I have several shares of Mingo, so I wasn't really looking to grab a whole bunch more of Mingo. So I went with the dual tight ends. My best tight end on the team so far is Chig Okonkwo, and to me, that felt like a perfect opportunity to grab a couple of tight ends. I did end up getting Mingo. He fell all the way to the 206, so I went ahead and grabbed him at the 206. To me, Mingo has a great opportunity, a rookie quarterback who's looking to develop, and the downside, he's got an offensive coordinator, offensive guru, and Frank Reich, who likes to spread the ball around a lot. And there's not, as a rookie, I'm not sold on his target volume, but at 206, I'm willing to sit on it for a little bit. Then I had 3 picks at the end of the second round. I went ahead, drafted Josh Downs. I paired him with Anthony Richardson, then Zach Evans. And then at 302, I took a big reach. There's a rookie out there I like in the later rounds of drafts, a wide receiver that wasn't healthy in college, and maybe he'll amount to something, maybe he won't. Early third round is ahead of ADP, but I didn't think I have the 401. I wasn't sure he'd make it there, so I grabbed Michael Wilson of the Cardinals. I think he brings something to the Cardinals that they don't have. He's a big wide receiver, has really good speed, pretty athletic, and everybody else on that wide receiver core is about 5'9" or less. So he does have something everybody else lacks. So I went ahead and grabbed him at the 302. So I like my rookie draft. I don't know that this team is going to be ready to compete this year. It's going to be a challenge. I have Deshaun Watson as my QB1, Mac Jones. I'll wait for Anthony Richardson to develop. I have the 2 rookie running backs and Javonte Williams. My wide receiver group, Rashad Bateman, but I got Garrett Wilson, Jahan Dotson, a favorite of our own Pete Bartowski, and a couple other young guys, Darius Slayton, Romeo Dobbs, Rashid Shaheed, Nico Collins. So we'll see if any of those guys pan out. Like I said, it's a rebuilding team. I did go for a couple wide receivers and a couple real high upside running backs. So as I mentioned, my hope was to lead off with some Hall of Fame notes. There's not a whole lot going on, but if you'll notice my shirt, the Fantasy Football Expo from 2022, Canton, Ohio. Next weekend is the 2023 Expo. I think our own Better Boss is going to be in attendance. Several other Better Sports Network people will be there from Fantasy Alarm and other shows. Dynasty Nerds, Canton is practically home. Thanks, boss. I just won the T. Higgins jersey at the Scott Fish Bowl live draft in Cincinnati, autographed and all. I was so stoked. The Fantasy Football Expo, an outstanding networking event for us in the fantasy football industry, but more importantly, it's a great opportunity for fans and players to meet some of the big names in the business. I'm not including me. I'll be there, but I'm not really a big name. Better Boss, he'll be there. He's a big name. He's been doing a whole lot of good stuff. But guys from Sirius XM, from ESPN, NBC Sports, Roto World, Roto Underworld, all the big sites, Fantasy Alarm. There'll be just a ton of fantasy football people there. If you haven't heard of it before, there's so many great things going on. The Kings Classic Draft. This is an event headed up by Bob Lung, who's the founder of the Fantasy Football Expo. Some of the heaviest hitters of the heaviest hitters in the fantasy industry. They'll be doing 2 sets of drafts. They do a snake draft, take a break, then they do an auction draft. These are 14 teamers. You get out there, you can swing by the not the Fantasy Football Hall of Fame, the NFL Hall of Fame, and watch these guys make their picks, do some drafts, see how they're budgeting. Saturday, there's Draft Night Out. There's a room full of people sponsored by the Draft Night Out people. And everybody's, they form leagues. You've been signed up. You can walk in and form leagues, draft a bunch of different teams. You get to meet so many people. Fantastic. I think it's Saturday afternoon, the flag football tournament on the fields at the Hall of Fame. You can still sign up. If you go to fantasyfootballexpo.com, you can still sign up, I believe, if you have a fantasy football flag team that you would like to enter into the tournament. It's an outstanding event. You get out there, you play against other fantasy football addicts. Phenomenal time. So I really like what we've got going on as we get ready. I know it's redraft season. We'll touch on that a little later in the show. We'll be trying. I hope you guys will keep me informed on the Hall of Fame game in the chat. Just, when you're throwing your trades in there, if something happens, Sedated Fork, just let me know. Izzy Abanikanda had a good run, about a 10-yard touchdown, showed some good speed to the outside. If you remember, Izzy has good speed. That's something he did bring to the table. His vision may be a little bit suspect, but what he does have is speed. I like Izzy. He went to a not great situation. I do think he's a better athlete than Zonovan Knight. If he can pick up the offense, I think there's going to be an opportunity for him to climb up the depth chart. Michael Carter seems to be in and out of the doghouse there. That team might as well be coached by a Shanahan the way he's in and out of the doghouse. We know that the top dog there, though, is Breece Hall. But clearly, their flirtation with Dalvin Cook, I think, tells us they want to bring somebody in to help share the load, at least for this year, while Breece Hall gets back in shape. The Jets don't see him bouncing back like, say, Adrian Peterson did. Not that I think he could have ran for 2,000 yards, but I definitely think that he might have, he looked last year like he was the dude. And after he injured his knee, there's just a little bit of trepidation. Dalvin Hall left without a contract. It seems that he may be pricing himself out. Miami says, I've heard they have a standing offer on the table. They view him as a luxury signing, so they're not willing to meet what he's asking for. We have 5.5 weeks or so, 6 weeks to go to get to the regular season. It'll be curious to see what Dalvin does. Will he bring his price down? He seems to be flirting with every team in the AFC East. I think Dalvin Cook still has a lot in the tank. If I'm looking at these free agent running backs that are still on the market, Dalvin is the one I want. Now, Dalvin will probably miss a game or two. That's kind of par for the course. He gets banged up. He runs hard, but he's an excellent pass receiver. He's got good speed, great vision. I like him better than Lenny. As much as I love Ohio State, I think Zeke is at the end of the road. He's gonna be a. Wouldn't surprise me if Zeke is a post-week 1 signing. Why post-week 1, Dennis? Well, let me tell you why post-week 1. Veteran contracts, if they're signed during the preseason, once week 1 has ended, those contracts are guaranteed for the rest of the season. If they sign the player after week 1 and they only want to keep him for 4 or 5 weeks, if they haven't written guarantees into the contract, those teams are not on the hook for the balance of that salary. So we'll see a lot of teams. It's going to be an interesting year this year. There are no cut down dates. Everybody gets cut at once. There's an extra week, I think, at the end of the preseason games. So there'll be a lot of cuts. Teams are then going to go into the market. We'll see some churn at the bottom of the roster. It's what every good fantasy manager should be doing with their dynasty team. They should be churning the bottom of their roster. When they see people on the waiver wire, you want to bring them in, keep them out, see who hits. If you get lucky, you grab a guy who's going to hit for a few weeks. You didn't pay much for him. Maybe you can move him for a 3rd-round pick. That's just a general strategy. It takes a lot of time, though, to churn rosters, especially if you play in a lot of leagues. That can get very tiresome. Back to the rundown, though. I got myself off on a tangent. So we're going to talk some trades. Put your trades in the comments. We want to hear about those. At 9:30, we're going to debut a little thing that I like to call That's Debatable. I got a couple great guests coming on. Edward Raus from the Monday Night Rants show. You hear him here on Better Sports Network every Monday night. And then Dan Toomey from Dynasty Nerds, who's one of the co-hosts of the Dynasty Team Audit on the Dynasty Nerds YouTube. You can submit your Dynasty team for an audit. They'll tell you, him and Tim Martins will tell you what they think you should do, what kind of deals you can make to improve your team. Maybe they tell you how to tear your team down. So I've got two great guests. I'm going to throw out a topic for them. We're going to slap a timer up on the screen. They get to debate each other one after the other. We'll chat a little bit, rebut that. And you guys in the chat, you get to tell us who wins. Give them points. Plop a point in the chat. Ed, 1. Dan, 1. We'll keep track. It's kind of debate club meets whose line is it anyways, because at any time I can give extra points. So we'll see how it goes. It's day 1 of That's Debatable. I'm really looking forward to bouncing that off the walls. So we're on to camp roundup. We're going to take a look here. So at the camp hop, the biggest news, Jonathan Taylor requests a trade. I see where he's coming from. And to me, it's a situation where Taylor has a great point. Over 800 carries in 3 years. They're like, hey, you need to earn. You've got a contract, earn the extension. He goes out, he plays hard, feels like he's earned the extension. He gets banged up. And now they're like, well, you've clearly been worked too hard. You're not worth the extension that you're asking for. Running backs are getting a very, very tough pill to swallow in the contract situation. I don't know a way around it. The collective bargaining agreement is what it is. We need to let it play out. Do I think he'll sit out? No. He's under contract. He's gonna lose money if he does. He'll get fined. They'll probably franchise tag him if he goes on to have a good year. Unfortunately, that's going to be below market value, I think, for a player of his talent next year. I think we see that this year with Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley. But as much as we want to argue that it's below market value, you're only as valuable as what the market will pay. It's just a situation that you feel for the guy because he's given his all to football, and now he's trying to take care of himself after getting beat up. It's a tough situation. I get, they traded Marshall Falk, and he went on to have some phenomenal years. They got rid of Edger and James. They did it with Joseph Adai. They're not necessarily looking to invest long-term in running backs in Indianapolis. They've spent a very high draft pick on a new quarterback. They want to put players around him that are going to make it easy for Anthony Richardson to be a successful quarterback. And as a one-year starter in college, it's safe to say Richardson has a lot of growth. We can sit here and say, well, a great way to do that is to have an exceptional running game, and you've got Jonathan Taylor. Nick Chubb got lucky. They signed Chubb to a nice 3-year extension, but it wasn't for big money. It was security is really what Chubb signed for. I think if Taylor was to take an extension like Chubb, they'd probably be able to get a deal done. But I don't think Chubb wants to take that kind of deal, Taylor wants to take that kind of deal because if he gets franchised twice, he'll make more in those 2 years than he would the first 2 years of the type of deal that Chubb's on. So Sedated Fork has a camp question. We're talking about camps. It says, what are we hearing about Kayshon Boutte? Surprised to see him flashing at camp. Is it just camp hype or is there something there? It's tough with the Patriots because Bill Belichick can be really hard on players. And Kayshon Boutte didn't earn himself a lot of points in the run-up to the draft. He didn't seem to take the process seriously, almost felt like he had showed he could do it. I don't know if any of you are old enough like me to remember Daryl Dawkins in the NBA. Big dude, 6'11", went to the NBA right out of high school, was notorious for not reaching his potential. He had a long career. I think he played 12, 13, 14 years, but he was notorious for not reaching his potential because he didn't work in practice. they would have him do a move and he would do it and they'd say, let's do it again. And he would look at him and say, I just showed you I could do it. Why do I have to do it again? And it was hard. It's, the Allen Iverson practice, we're talking about practice. So Butte in the run up to the draft ended up, running slow, not testing athletically, didn't interview great. Landing in New England doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like a great opportunity because Belichick does not take kindly to that type of stuff. On the other hand, Belichick is also notorious for giving people a clean slate. Corey Dillon wore out his welcome in Cincinnati and was, considered to be a problem child. He went to New England and finished out with a phenomenal career in New England. Ran for a lot of yards while he was in New England. So I think the opportunity for Butte to flash and maybe earn a spot, I feel he's probably headed for the practice squad. Could he make the team? Sure. They don't have very good depth at wide receiver. It's going to be very, very. I'm curious to see how that wide receiver core comes out of training camp. After last season's debacle with the defensive coordinators and special teams coordinators being the offensive coordinators as a tandem, Mac Jones did not seem very happy. And it was one of those things where they're moving on. Bill doesn't like people to express themselves the way Mac did in regards to that situation. I get it. Mac was chapped. He let it get the best of him. I think Mac is clearly the best quarterback in New England. I do not have concerns about Bailey Zappi. I think Bailey Zappi is, who's that cat that backed up Brady that went to Kansas City, didn't start in Matt Castle. I think other than the fact that Matt Castle Bailey Zappi actually started games in college, I think he's a Matt Castle, a Ryan Mallett type. He's a guy that when he gets a chance to play over the next couple of years, if he does well, Belichick is going to ship him off for draft picks that he can use to make the team better. And he's going to ride Mac Jones. I think he likes the fire that Mac Jones shows. I think as long as they've got a decent offensive coordinator and Mac can stay healthy, it's going to be a good situation. So having Butte, I might, if you said you have a lot of shares of Kayshon Butte, I might try to divest a little bit of it. But if you've got taxi squad, end of the bench where you're not really worrying about having to play a guy, I don't see how keeping him around for a little while to see what happens coming out of camp isn't necessarily a bad thing. So I don't mind keeping him there at the end of the roster. I agree with you, Better Boss. The Fantasy Football Expo is a wonderful fan event. And it's a great place to meet cool dudes like you. That's where we first met last year. All right, so moving down the camp list. Anthony Richardson. Monday, he took all of the reps, first team reps. And then he had a kind of Tuesday, Wednesday, he was up and down a little bit. Well, rookies, that's what they do. They go up and down a little bit. Are you scared of Gardner Minshew starting the season? I don't know if I'm scared of Gardner Minshew starting the season. I acknowledge that it's a possibility that Gardner Minshew could start the season. Minshew was a cool story, unheralded, late round pick, jorts, mustache, mullet wearing, he's a cool story. It's the kind of guy you want to root for. But as an NFL quarterback, he's clearly a backup. He's probably not in the top half. All right, maybe he's in the middle of the pack in backup quarterbacks. I think he can go in and, keep you in a game. He's not a guy that's going to win you a game. But I don't think any backups are really guys that are going to win you games. So we may see, I remember when the Browns came back, They started Coy Detmer, I think it was, in their first game, and then looked around and were like, nah, we're going to Tim Couch. Downside of it, they never gave Tim Couch any protection, and he got the snot beat out of him, so he never had a chance to fulfill his potential. They kind of did the same thing with Colt McCoy up there in Cleveland. They gave him a shot and didn't protect him. So Richardson, 6'5", 245 pounds, exceptional athlete, had the propensity to look downfield. So he's going to have an up and down camp. He's a rookie. If he starts day one, I think that's great. I still think there may be an opportunity in season where they sit him down for a game if it seems to be too fast. He doesn't strike me as somebody who's going to get their confidence wavered. If that's the case, I'm in on Richardson. I think he's going to develop just fine. Next on the list, in the longest news story ever, Alvin Kamara expects to get suspended. So we've only seen this coming for a year and a half. I feel like it's going to be 6 and appeal down to 4 and appeal down to 3. But whatever it is, he earned it. He's going to try to talk himself out of it. And I think, Kamara's better days are behind him. Because he is a prolific pass catcher, I think he can have, a few years of QB2, or not QB, low-end RB2, flex-worthy RB production, especially if he's on a team that's pass-heavy, because he's good at passing the ball or catching the pass. Same thing, I guess. I like Kamara a lot. His price is being depressed. I think if I can have him as my RB3 on my Dynasty team, RB4 preferably. I don't know that I'm trading a first-round pick for him. If I could get him for a second and a third, I like Alvin Kamara. To me, that's a guy that can come back in 4 to 6 weeks, and you can slide into that flex RB3 spot and let him help you win some games this fantasy season. What's it mean for Kendre Miller? I think Miller's going to get a chance to show himself. When Kamara gets back, I think they defer to Miller. The guy I really like is Jamal Williams. I think he'll get a little more volume while Kamara is out. But once Kamara gets back, his volume will be similar to what it was last year. The question ends up being, will he get the number of touchdowns he did? I'm not counting on it. We've seen Kamara be very, very good in the red zone. So expecting Williams to take over all of that work, I think that's a little bit of a reach. But I think this year's Jamal Williams could very well be Jamal Williams. I like what he brings to the table. He is a decent pass catcher, so he could surprise there. He's big, he's 225 pounds or so he can get into the end zone, short yardage. And that's really where he cashed in last year. I like Jamal Williams probably the best. I think on any given week, I think Kamara is the guy that's going to have the best ceiling in that offense as a running back. We could see Kamara. We've seen him have big games. He could catch 7 or 8 passes and a couple touchdowns and maybe even run one in. We've seen him have a monster game in the fantasy playoffs. We'll get back to some more camp notes, but after this break, we're going to bring in my guests, Edward and Dan, and we are going to kick off That's Debatable.
I feel like this is a quietly contentious point in Dynasty fantasy football, what it means to actually be rebuilding. Some people say you should never truly be rebuilding. How do you view the rebuilding versus competing dichotomy in Dynasty?
So I will be the first person to acknowledge that my preferred format of fantasy football is just redraft. The years that I have played Dynasty, it has been I've drafted a win now team because I've seen people that have just gotten into the cycle of rebuilding and thus they just don't make any progress. So if you're rebuilding for the 5th year in a row, I just, I don't know exactly how you get out of it, but yeah, it's definitely something that can happen. And a lot of people, especially when we come out of the NFL draft, everyone's just instantly shipping off, draft picks and everything. So, I mean, it's definitely something that can happen.
Joey, do you feel similarly to it? Do you feel like you see people getting stuck in the rebuilding loop?
I mean, I would say people that try to rebuild in the beginning of seasons, of their fantasy seasons, I see them get stuck in that rut. I would really try to only ever rebuild if I knew I was going to miss the playoffs. Like, I'm always trying to play to win, even if it's maybe I don't know.
I think my big thing is the word rebuild is a much shorter time frame than I think most people say it should be. Like, they look at rebuild as like 3 years out competing. Rebuild, you're looking to compete next season. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing it now, you're looking to revamp, and maybe there's a one season where you ship it off, but that very next season you should be competing. If you're doing it like that, I'm cool with it, but you gotta have a plan, not just keep getting the young players, keep getting the draft picks. Otherwise, you end up like Tim. Maybe not like Tim who gets a bye, but you make the playoffs, you're in that like 4 to 6 range every year, just hovering in the middle. Nothing ever gets better, nothing ever gets worse.
I think I play like you in Dynasty, Simon. I play in 3-year windows.
100%. That's my go-to. And with the rate at which Dynasty leagues turn over, you should really only ever play in a 3-year window.
All right, folks. Welcome to That's Debatable, where the points are fake, the debates are real, and in the end, it's really just me deciding who the actual winner is. Not really. You guys, when these guys are talking, I want you in the chat. I want you to give them points, and we're going to tally up these points and see who wins these debates. It's debate club meets whose line is it anyway? And we're looking to have a good time. We got a few Dynasty topics. We'll see how many we get through. But first, let me introduce my guests. So I'm hoping everybody sees it the same as I am. Those that don't see it, just trust me. To my left is Dan Toomey of DynastyNerds.com, co-host of the Dynasty Audit Show on the Dynasty Nerds YouTube, anchor of the Dynasty Nerds draft coverage marathon, in general, awesome guy for Dynasty Nerds. And then right below me, the one, the only, the rantable, Edward Raus, host of Monday Night Rants right here on the Better Sports Network. Tune in every Monday at 9 o'clock and listen to Edward get it off his chest. How you doing, fellas?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Dennis. Had to break out the Browns jersey for the first time in a while. Feels good. Got a little John Kelly touchdown, DeJuan Jones highlights. It's a good night. I do have CFL on the second screen though. You can't hate on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers versus the BC Lions. It's a very good game they got going on in Canada right now.
Well, you got to love any league that gives two teams the same name. Isn't there like 2 Rough Riders in the CFL?
No, just Saskatchewan. I've actually gotten very into CFL this year, and I can name all the teams, which I think is quite the accomplishment over the normal person.
That has to be
debatable. I hope we don't get to where we have to say that. All right, how you doing, Edward?
I'm doing great. I'm watching football. Well, at least some form of it. It looks like. It is what it is, but yeah, it's great. Football's here. I'm excited. We started ramping up more football talk on my show as well, so that means we're here, and I'm ready to get some debating, my debate on, if you will. Get some stuff off my chest, as you would say.
Yeah, we're going to find out which one of you is a master debater here in a minute. I low-hanging fruit. I know.
We made it 2 minutes into the show.
I went and turned on the game, got all ready to watch. And as my TV popped on, it informed me that my cable company and NBC were having a dispute. So you guys will have to interject with the updates. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to give you a topic. You guys have a side. The opener is going. You got 90 seconds to make your case. Then the other guy got 90 seconds to make their case for the other side of it. We're going to rack up points along the way. Then we're going to give you 60 seconds to rebut the other person's case. And in the end, we'll see who gets the most points. We won't announce it like after each point. We're going to add it up. We're going to have a grand champion at the end.
I'm expecting like a wrestling championship belt, right? Like
That'd be sick.
we got a prize, right,
well,
Dennis?
First we got to see if this even works. You guys are my guinea pig.
Okay.
So, all right. So the first thing, Dak Prescott came into the league. He was a 4th-round pick. Tony Romo was there and well established. And bam, Romo gets injured. Dak takes over. Never looks back. First few seasons, but he was good for what? 500 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns. He was throwing the ball great. Injured his ankle. Well, now here we are, 30 years old. He missed 5 games last year. He's finished as a top 12 quarterback in 5 out of his 7 seasons, including being the QB2 in 2019. Is Dak Prescott worth investing in as a dynasty asset as your QB1 for the next 2 to 3 years? Who's got the no side, Edward?
Yeah, I'll take the no side on this one. I feel pretty confident with it. Let me know when I should go. I love the scorecard. Let's do this. Is it on your marks? Get set.
Let's go. Well, we're waiting for Tyler to hit the timer.
Be a buzzer.
All right. Yeah. The biggest concern for me here with Dak is the loss of Kellen Moore. I think he's had that offense, top 10 offense in the league for a long time. I know he had a down year last year, but they were still one of the best red zone teams in the NFL, regardless. And just like Mike McCarthy coming out and saying, we're going to run the damn ball. Get out of here. Nah, I don't like it. And he hasn't been the same since his ankle injury either. You got CeeDee Lamb and then a bunch of receivers who are off injured as well. So I just don't see him being an asset that I would want when I can get a younger, more, athletic quarterback with more rushing ability than Dak Prescott, because his rushing ability every year has gone down, down, down. So I would never trade for him right now in Dynasty unless I absolutely had to at his lowest. And if I lost my quarterbacks or something. So I'm not even touching him. I just don't like it. And I know I talk a lot of slander on Dallas. I know they're the America's team. They're not. Come on, people. That's dumb. But nah, I'm done. No more. I'm over it. I think he's going to have an even worse year and more interceptions this year as well.
Well, I got to tell you, I, for one, I could go either way. So we're going to queue up Dan's turn. Are you ready, Dan?
I am ready.
Before you go, sedated fork, the point scale is whatever you decide you want to put in the chat.
Sedated fork. Listen, man, I better get a bunch of zeros after my numbers. Like
1 million points.
1, and then like as many zeros as your keyboard can go for.
Let's
tell me when I'm good to start.
You're good.
All right. So the whole deal with Dak Prescott, and I actually had a conversation with a Cowboys fan at work about this, is I describe him as a Kirk Cousins type quarterback where he isn't elevating the players around him, but he allows himself to be elevated by those around him. What I mean is by receiving weapons. Now, last year was a down year, but you look at their target leaders, and Dalton Schultz was right behind CeeDee Lamb. And listen, I love Dalton Schultz. He was great for fantasy last year, but I don't consider him a top-tier receiver in the league at the moment. They're missing Michael Gallup last year. They're missing Jalen Tolbert. He has those weapons back. The years that Dak had his best fantasy finishes, he had weapons like a CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. The years when he had his worst finishes was when he had, Dalton Schultz, because it wasn't the first time he was top 2 in the team in targets. And about the offensive coordinator, believe it or not, his first 3 seasons, Scott Linehan was the offensive coordinator, and Kellen Moore took over in 2019. Under Scott Linehan, Dak was finishing QB7, QB10, and then QB 14 was his down year. So he has shown before that regardless of offensive coordinator, he can return a top 12 finish. And I'm extremely confident he'll be a top 12 option this year with the addition of those weapons, Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb. He won't be relying on tight ends like he did last year.
I low-key love the Brandon Cooks signing, Dan. I think, Edward, I think he's got you on the ropes.
No way.
What do you
Brandon
think?
Cooks, come on. 2 games,
Let's
then he's
go.
on the
Go.
injured reserve. Get out of here.
Hold on,
Brandon
Tyler.
Cooks, he's always hurt.
Go,
Michael
Tyler.
Gallup can't stay healthy. I just don't trust those receivers to stay. If they stay healthy, yes, but I can't trust it because they haven't shown they can. And, double team CeeDee Lamb, he doesn't have the Schultz to, help him anymore. He doesn't have mobility anymore. And those years with Linehan were back when he was starting his prime and younger, right? Now he's 30 years old. Yeah, he may have I'd say top 15 year this year, but it's never going to get better after that. I was never really high on him in the first place when he got drafted and just kind of took over. And then he's like, oh, maybe he's good, but I'd rather go somewhere else or find a quarterback in my draft.
Yeah, I want to go there. It sounds like, your big argument is age and his wide receivers are going to get injured. And I just don't know if that's the case. Just don't know. All right, let's go, Tyler. Dan, you're up. Let's close it out.
All right, so I understand the argument for wide receivers and injuries, but I also know when you're playing fantasy football, banking on injuries to happen is not something you can count on. So yes, I do agree. If Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, Michael Gallup were to go down with injuries, I hate Dak Prescott for this year. However, we have to start with our assumption for week 1 that all will be healthy. Obviously, injuries will change all of that. He is under contract with the Cowboys to speak from a more dynasty perspective through the 2024 season. And to be honest, I don't see this Dallas team being bad enough to find themselves in the position to draft a quarterback in the top 12, which means he will be the starter for the next 3 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I don't think he's going anywhere. I like sedated Fork's approach. He went with the boxing approach. I think we're going to give this round to Dan 10-9. We do have some breaking news. I'm going to interject here. The Bears have just signed Yannick Ngakoue to a 1-year, $10 million deal, or $10.5 million with $10 million guaranteed. I mean, why don't you just guarantee the other $500,000, guys? What are we doing here? So my question to you guys off the record, how much help is Yannick Ngakoue going to be to Justin Fields being a more efficient passer?
I mean, I think it's good to see that the Bears are still spending money, with Justin Fields under contract. It just shows a willingness to invest in the team to win this year, spending that money. Because what was it like last year, 2 seasons ago, they unloaded all of their contracts, and this past off season, they had the most money to spend out of all 32 NFL teams. So it's nice to see them deploying those assets. And I really like the way the front office is kind of rebuilding this team around Fields, which, Fields just has to take that step forward this year and prove that he is worthy of a extension. It's a big year for him as far as his future is concerned.
Yeah, I like the move for the Bears in general. I agree. So we'll see what happens. I mean, that defense can't get a whole heck of a lot worse than it was last year. All right, so that was round 1. Dan edged him out a tad. So we're going to go away from players a little bit and more to players, i.e. fantasy managers. And we're going to talk a little bit about a very hot button topic that I think it can cause divide in a league. So tanking is one of the issues. Like, leagues are writing in rules about you can't tank, how you can tank. It's probably one of the most, next to scoring, it's probably the most governed topic in fantasy football. So Edward, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay.
Make the case for tanking being allowed. Hit it, Tyler.
All right. Tanking. It's pretty much allowed in sports as it is now. You just don't really know it. They try to make all these rules on lottery and stuff like that, but teams know what they're doing. Come on. But as far as fantasy football, it really is up to the commissioner to put rules in place. We don't have a tanking rule per se in my Dynasty league, but we have a rule that you have to put players in every week. Now, there's no rule that says what players. If I'm starting off 1-7 and I'm looking, man, I have Kirk Cousins and that's it. And Tom Brady retired for me last year. And I'm looking at Caleb Williams, looking my, maybe I'll put in some of my backups in for the rest of the year. Just saying. I'm still following the rules, putting in my lineup. But at the same time, I'm paying money every year. And I'm not going to pay money every year to constantly lose. And if it's a chance for me to win the next year or get Caleb Williams or someone like that to help the league be more competitive as well in the future, I think there's nothing wrong with it. I'm helping the league be more competitive in the future instead of just me sitting there week after week going, oh, I can't take. I'm just playing these mediocre guys every week. I'm never going to win. Why am I here? That's not fun. So I think it's okay as long as the commissioner has the correct rules. But if you don't put a lineup in and just leave it blank, that's when there has to be some sort of line drawn. But there's no rule that says who you can play and who you can't. Just like, in the NFL.
I got to say, you made some very, very good points there, Edward. So we'll get Dan up here. Let's get the timer set. All right, Dan. Why should tanking not be allowed? Go.
All right. My argument is being based on 3 little words. Max points for. Every Dynasty league should have this setting turned on. I know it's in Sleeper. I'm sure MFL has it also. Rookie draft order should be determined by max points for. That basically adds up for all teams across the league, the maximum amount of points you could have scored that season, including your bench players, including your starters. That gives teams the ability, or actually requires teams to trade away talent so they can take points away from that max. I mean, tanking, like, it's got so many definitions, but this is the way Dynasty leagues should be run, where it doesn't matter what your record is. It doesn't matter if you sat Kirk Cousins last week. He will still count against your max points for because he was on your team. So the only true way to guarantee that coveted 101 for Caleb Williams next year is trading away all your talent, trading away your Kirk Cousins, trading away your Dalvin Cooks, trading away all your players to minimize the points possibility coming from your roster and really, truly secure that 101 in the completely most fair fashion possible.
Dan, I got to say, I'm in a league where our draft order is set on potential points. So your whatever your best lineup that week would have been determines your draft order. And so I'm faced with the choice of trading away Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, and Devonta Smith. And I got to be honest, I don't like that feeling one bit. So I'm going to give you negative points.
Okay. This is rigged. This whole thing's rigged.
Edward, Why is Dan full of it? Go.
Well, first of all, that's like a best ball approach to determine the draft order. That's kind of weird too. I don't know. I'm really have no further questions, Your Honor. But I got 30 seconds. So should I tell a dad joke? I don't know. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, again, that makes a lot of sense in the term, but then you're forcing teams to trade their good players to other teams who already have good players, making them better. And you're still Caleb Williams, and you just got rid of Devonta Smith and all that to get that one. Then you're still in that mediocre, plethora for the rest of your time in that league, and it's not fair that way. There has to be a way to checks and balances there.
You make a great point. Like I said, I'm sitting here and I'm debating because I had the worst record this year, but I had the 104. So it's I could, man, I can't bring myself to trade Jamar Chase. I just can't. Tell us why Ed's wrong in his rebuttal, Dan. Go.
So A side effect of this rule that I've seen play out in a lot of my leagues and that I enjoy is it actually forces more trade activity when you get closer to the trade deadline, especially in a year where you have somebody like Caleb Williams coming down the road and people really want that 101. That the trade deadline, there's going to be a lot of incentive for moves to be made, for trades to happen. It kind of breathes some life into the league. There's a lot of leagues that I'm in are that they just become stale, and people are like, I'm waiting for the rookie draft, I'm waiting for stuff to happen. And the max point four rule really just puts an urgency on those quote unquote tankers to make moves to the trade deadline, which makes for a more active league.
Yeah. So I'm working so hard to set my personal bias aside and be an impartial and fair judge of this. So I'm going to call it a draw. All right. No, Heavy T says Edward got this one. All right. So I'll go with Heavy T. We'll call this one. So I scheduled 20 minutes for this because I had no idea. But if you guys can stick around for one more,
Yeah,
you will go.
I'm yours all night, Dennis.
We'll run one more, and like I said, I put together several topics because I had no idea how much BS I would talk in the middle and how long it would take. So, all right, we're gonna run one more. So we got it tied. One round to Dan, one round to Edward. The last one. So this one, we all know that Travis Kelce may very well be the best tight end to ever play the game, and not just for fantasy, but ever. He's had his last 7 seasons, he's had 5 tight end 1 and 2 tight end 2 seasons. At age 33, he is linked up with the best quarterback in the NFL, who is only 26, 25, and is looking like he himself is on a Hall of Fame trajectory. The funnel starts at Travis Kelce, which makes it unfair. But I want you guys, and I'll start with you, Dan, make the case for any tight end not named Travis Kelce to be the tight end 1 in 2023. Go.
All right, so this is a bit of a dark horse, but I think if anybody's going to take the crown for tight end 1 in 2023, I think Darren Waller has a very good shot at it. I was actually at Giants training camp earlier this week on Monday, and all the reports from the beat reporters are that Dable literally dragged Darren Waller off the field so that Daniel Jones would throw to somebody who wasn't Darren Waller. And you can see this in person when you stand on the sideline watching the Giants wide receiver core. You have like short guy, short guy, short guy, short guy, big old Darren Waller. That team is a bunch of slot wide receivers that they need a big dominant alpha, and Darren Waller will slide into that role perfectly. The best thing is he used to be a wide receiver. He was literally on the Ravens as a wide receiver before finding his second wind in his career with the Raiders at the tight end position. I think Dable is going to use him as one of those big slot type tight ends, and he's honestly, he may gobble up 130, 140 targets this year on a Giants offense that is going to be much more improved than it was last year. So taking the crown away from Kelce is tough, barring injury, but I think Darren Waller has a dark horse outside shot to finish on top at the tight end position in 2023.
I like the choice. He's had a very productive passing season before. Competition for targets is indeed poor. And I like that, he's been going, I think he's been going about tight end 7 or 8. So it isn't like
I can't stop drafting Darren Waller in underdog. Every draft is just an easy 5th round click for me.
All right, Edward, you tell me who's going to be the tight end 1, if not Travis Kelce?
TJ Hawkinson. Let's go. From week 12 to week 18, he outscored Travis Kelce in fantasy points towards the end of the season. What? That's right. He ended up being tight end number 2 and he played for 2 different teams. Okay, he has Kirk Cousins throwing. Everyone's like, "Oh, Jordan Addison, he's going to be on the team now." Nah, the number 2 receiver in Minnesota is going to be T.J. Hawkinson. All the double teaming on Justin Jefferson, bring on Hawkinson. He already showed the last quarter of the season he can match week for week fantasy points with Travis Kelce. I'm taking week 18 out of it because they both didn't play because both teams were in the playoffs. But yeah, it's a no-brainer. Hawkinson easily could be the number 2 receiver in Minnesota. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot because the defense in Minnesota stinks. It is the worst defense in football, hands down. I say that all the time on my show. Shout out to all the Minnesota fans watching right now, and I'm sorry, but I'm right. I like TJ Hawkinson this year. I'm not the one drafting Travis Kelce in the first round. I'm not touching that, but I'll take TJ Hawkinson as the next tight end who could and probably may even overtake him as TE overall 1 this year. Give me some TJ, baby.
Yeah, while it feels inevitable, it's got to be somebody. As a lifelong Lions fan, I struggle with the fact that it could be Hawkinson. So Better Boss is throwing out Kyle Pitts as the tight end 1. So I'm going to give you each an opportunity. You can either support Better Boss's argument.
No.
Or you can tell him he's crazy and that Kyle Pitts is not going to be.
Look,
All
the
right,
quarterbacks. Look at the quarterbacks.
Could we
obvious.
turn this last section to the agreeables?
Yeah.
Because I agree, Pitts is not it this year.
This part is called That's Agreeable.
Yeah, as somebody who drafted Pitts real early in a startup a couple years ago, I got to say I'm kind of running out of patience a little bit. I like that between London and Pitts, they seem to have a narrow funnel, but now they're talking about, we want to give Bijan Robinson all these passes. And then Mac Hollins came out of nowhere. He's like career backup guy last year in Las Vegas. What do you have, 90 catches or something? Put up a crazy good year. And I got to be honest, there's nobody better than Mac Hollins after Kyle Pitts and Drake London in Atlanta. So
the problem with that, Dennis, is it's a small funnel, but the sink is just dripping really slowly into the funnel. Like drip, drip, drip. Like, you might want to call a plumber. The sink might just be leaking. The water's coming out so slow.
Now, I will say Better Boss has a great point in that Kyle Pitts does have the best athletic upside of any of the tight ends going.
Well, if the question was who has the best athletic upside,
right?
The problem is the offense is going to have less than 450 pass attempts on the season.
Yeah, the focal point is all 3 of those running backs they have there. Where Kirk Cousins is going to throw the ball, Daniel Jones will have to throw the ball for.
And speaking of Mac Hollins, I hate to say it, but the reason Mac Hollins was brought in is because he is an A+ run blocker when he's on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So that was 3 rounds. You guys want to go? Do you need to rebut your choices?
Can we debate why Josh Jacobs was number 12 on the top 100 list today? Speaking of Mac Hollins blocking. Jesus. Anyways, sorry. Just tangent.
I thought you ranted, not tangent.
I do both.
So, well, gentlemen, I appreciate you both coming on tonight and helping me try out this new thing here. Edward, you want to let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, right here on the Better Sports Network. That's at Better Network at all the favorite social media platforms and now X, because X is going to give it to you. But yeah, I'm at Edward Raus. You can find everything I do on there. I'm on Instagram as well, at Edward Raus. I have a lot of fun clips and videos. There's one of me throwing an axe from over the weekend last week if you want to check that out as well. I don't know. It's fun. And I'm looking forward to a great football season and being the bookend that ends the week from Dynasty Nerds to me on Monday. It's every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Where can we find you, Dan?
Yep, you can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter, at DanT_NFL. And you can find all my work at Dynasty Nerds. Like Dennis mentioned, Tim and I, we do the Dynasty Team Audit Series on our YouTube channel. Around draft season, Tim and I do a lot of live stream draft coverage. You can find my articles, written work on the Dynasty Nerds website, and then also on our Discord for the Nerd Herd members. We do shows almost every week. I know Dennis is a regular featured member over there, so a lot of places to check me out. My home base will always be Dynasty Nerds.
All right, so here's what everybody wants to know is who won, and I'm going to give it to Dan because I think the Waller pick was gutsier. So I'm going to give him a half a point extra for the gutsier pick.
I'm going to train, and I'm going to get my best Rocky on, and I'm coming back better than ever next time, baby.
I think we need a rematch. That's definitely in the books. Edward, it was a wonderful time dueling with you tonight, and I look forward to sparring the next time we get together.
Can't wait to see the videos of Edward punching the side of beef. All right, so we got a break coming up. After the break, we're going to talk some more Dynasty Fantasy Football, and we'll close out this last hour and see if we can get some updates on the Hall of Fame game.
There, Dennis.
Breece Hall right now, and I've talked to plenty of high-stakes players, I'm sure you have too, Kev. Had Hall not torn his ACL last year, he might have been the 101 in drafts this year. That's how good he was looking last year, and obviously with the addition of Aaron Rodgers. At the 305, running back 11 behind Derrick Henry and Ramondre Stevenson, right ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs and Najee Harris. Your thoughts on him as a mid-third round pick? How have you been attacking him? Have you been getting him at that spot so far this year?
Yeah, if I start out with two wide receivers, Breece Hall is right at the top of the queue coming into the third. If I knew he'd be healthy for week one, I was still a little.
Well, he'd be going higher than the mid third.
Right. He may go 101 or well, RB1 at least.
Yeah.
But I don't think we know that even if he's healthy in spring and the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I still like if I'm running a team, if I'm the coach, I'm bringing him back slow. Like he's on a pitch count. Like I want him for the end of the season because I got Aaron Rodgers for the playoffs, right? Like even if he's fully healthy, I would work him in slow. But that is actually what you want. Like he's still going to get the high value touches. So yeah, if we know he's healthy, he's a first rounder. So like if he's sitting there in the third, especially when I get two wide receivers to start, I'll take Hall all day.
Yeah, it almost makes me think that the uncertainty with Breece Hall has made him unfairly fall too far, right? Like because we're talking about the team here in June. They're still hoping that he's ready for week one. This is not, oh, we'll see what happens. Oh, we're taking it day by day. Oh, we're liking how he's coming along. No, they still think by week one. And the fact that we have that timeline, I think, maybe bumps him up, especially as the drafting season gets deeper and deeper here in July and August. Maybe we start seeing him go up the boards as well.
All right, and welcome back. So that's Debatable. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to being able to bring it to you in the future. Talking Dynasty is so much fun. But now we're getting into point scoring season. We got a few more weeks. Let's go ahead and talk a little more camp stuff. So Dalvin Cook visited the Jets. Didn't get a contract. Seems like he is just wanting too much money. I would think that, if Jonathan Taylor is struggling to get the money he wants, that Dalvin, if he wants to go play somewhere that can win, he's got two good options in the Jets and the Dolphins. It doesn't seem like, oddly enough, the Bills don't seem terribly interested. And frankly, I don't think the Patriots provide much of an opportunity to win. So I still expecting to probably end up in New York, which brings me to the fantasy relevance of the Dolphins running backs. these are two guys in Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert who have been going late. They've been RB like 43 and 48, 37 and 41. They're going real late in startup drafts. Now, I get it in startup drafts, but if you're a contender and you're looking for depth at running back, I think I'd start trying with a 3rd round pick to get Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert. And Wilson is the guy I like better. He was top 5 in explosive runs last year, top 5 or 6 in runs over 20 yards, top 5 in runs over 30 yards. He just fits the offense very well. And while he doesn't have the explosiveness of Raheem Mostert, I do think Wilson has a little better track record of staying healthy. So those are two guys that I think you can get real cheap that I'd keep my eyes on. Out in Las Vegas, we got Michael Mayer making some news. The Raiders just cut loose, that potential filled human being, O.J. Howard. So that leaves them with Michael Mayer and Austin Hooper at the top of their depth chart. After a volume-filled season in Atlanta a few years ago, Hooper signed a big old contract with Tennessee or with Cleveland, and then went to Tennessee. Never really panned out. And now he's out in Las Vegas. I think Mayer is the guy that's going to end up being the receiving threat, not like Darren Waller was. I think he's going to be a more traditional tight end. When they're in 11 personnel, I think you're going to see a good amount of Mayer. I think Hooper is a mentor. He's there to give Michael Mayer pointers on how to be in the right place, do the right things. While Mayer doesn't have quite the athletic ability of guys like Sam Laporta or TJ Hawkinson or George Kittle and nobody has that of Kyle Pitts. Mayer is a good enough athlete. He gets comped a lot to Jason Witten. And when that happens, the image that comes to mind is post-announcing Jason Witten, where it was run 5 yards, catch ball, fall down. But prior to that, Jason Witten had a long career of being an effective mid-range receiver. And I think Michael Mayer can do that. 6'4", almost 260 pounds. He's going to be able to fill in that role for the Raiders, take over that tight end spot, and be that guy in Las Vegas. So if you drafted him, he was falling down draft boards. People were in rookie drafts. People were in love with the athletic ability of Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta. I get it. It's not a point per block. You want guys that aren't going to be blocking much, but you also want guys that are on the field a lot. And I think that's the box that Michael Mayer checks. Up in Seattle, Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker early in this week gave all of us a scare when they were both injured. Now, the time to panic was not this week. Essentially, we know what's behind them. It's Kenny McIntosh. It's DJ Dallas, friend of the show. They don't have a lot of outstanding depth. They've got guys that are real, actual, just depth. They're going to play hard, but they just don't quite have the ability. McIntosh looked good as a receiver in college, tested really, really poorly athletically. So the time to panic was when they started to bring in players, when they started to bring in the Fournettes, the Hunts, the Zekes. And guess what they didn't do? They did not bring in anybody. They said, hey, this guy's injured and this guy's injured, but no, we're good. We don't need to bring in any other players to sign. We don't need camp bodies. It's a great sign for both Charbonnet and for Kenneth Walker. Dan Graziano even though Walker is still out, he's reporting that he expects Kenneth Walker to get the bulk of the work. There are some concerns because Walker isn't terribly efficient in the passing game. And while he's got okay size, he's 5'9", not quite 5'10", and 209 pounds. Charbonnet is a bigger back, about 5'11", almost 6 foot, over 220. Charbonnet in college was a much better receiver with his size, was maybe a little bit better in short yardage, goal line situations. That being said, Charbonnet does not have the explosiveness that Kenneth Walker does. I think the biggest knock on Kenneth Walker is he wants to bounce everything to the outside so he can try and break off a big run. And he's going to have to get over that or he'll find himself watching Zach Charbonnet. You got to hit the hole that you're assigned. If it's not there, then you bounce it out. But if it's there and it's small, you still get through it. You figure it out. You run through arm tackles. You get to that next level. You make a play. You pick up yardage. You go fight to live another day. I think going into year 2, I think Walker's going to be able to do that on a much, much higher level. I'm still pretty high on Walker. And as much as I want to buy into Zach Charbonnet, you know, I just am not 100% sold. I think he's going to be one of these backs that is good, but will end up being ultimately replaceable. He'll be a timeshare back maybe. You know, we're looking for workhorses. They're few and far between in the NFL anymore. So if you roster Charbonnet, he's probably going to have several flex-worthy weeks this season. And if Walker gets injured, he'll definitely be a RB2 worthy start. Walker, I think, has the opportunity to turn in some RB1 weeks. Should be a fairly consistent RB2. And if he just gets a few targets a game, he doesn't need to, you know, have Austin Eckler passing volume. If he gets 3, maybe 4 targets a game, I think Walker's going to have a ton of ability to put up big fantasy points. So don't sweat it yet. Out in San Francisco, Brock Purdy. He hasn't been practicing, but he's been throwing. You know, he tore a tendon in his elbow. Not good. And Mike Shanahan was talking about, you know, he's experiencing some soreness after throwing sessions, which I believe is to be expected. You know, Purdy is one of those guys that has a ton of moxie, but I don't know that there's a lot of difference between what Purdy brings to the table and what Jimmy Garoppolo brings to the table. They're both heady quarterbacks that tend to make the right play. About once a game, they'll do something that's iffy. Purdy has ended up being luckier when he makes that mistake, but he's only 5 games into his career. Jimmy G has a tendency to, because he's been in the league now, 9 years? And he started a fairly decent amount of games. He has those games where, you know, he just puts the ball in a bad place. He gets it picked off at a bad time. Purdy's still in that small sample size category of being super successful. I like Purdy. I just wish he had Trey Lance's raw ability. I like Lance's raw ability. I just wish he had Brock Purdy's feel for the game. You know, maybe our robot overlords in the future will be able to put those together and make more great quarterbacks. But Purdy, I think it sounds like he's on track to get back under center, if not in week 1, fairly early in the season. I don't know if this means that they're going to keep Sam Darnold as the number 2, if they're secretly actively trying to trade Trey Lance. We'll have to wait and see. The jury is still out. In other San Francisco news, another running back got injured. Elijah Mitchell's expected to miss 7 to 10 days with an adductor strain. I don't know what it is about San Francisco. And the inability to keep their running backs healthy. But if I'm Christian McCaffrey, I might be looking for a body double. There's a lot of injuries going around San Francisco when it comes to running backs. Ron Rivera, Washington Commanders. It seemed like the new ownership is breathing new life into that team. And then Ron Rivera comes out and says, don't sleep on Jacoby Brissett. Now, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. And Jacoby Brissett has had several opportunities to be the guy. He's a low-end QB2. You know, for fantasy, I think if you're going to turn to Brissett, he's not as good of an athlete as Sam Howell. He's not as fast as Sam Howell. I want to see Sam Howell get a shot. And let's see what he can do. I think the truth of the matter is that Sam Howell nor Jacoby Brissett are the future of the Washington Commanders. I expect that Rivera is probably going to be gone after the season. New ownership often brings in new front office and new team leadership. It doesn't bode well for Terry McLaurin or Jahan Dotson at this point. We'll have to wait and see. There's going to be some turnover there. But I don't think, we can sleep on Jacoby Brissett. If you're starting Jacoby Brissett, it's because you're in a league that you have to start a quarterback and your other guys got injured. Jim Harbaugh. Can they just get the J.K. Dobbins thing fixed? I get it. He was injured a lot last year. But when he played, he was explosive. I don't know if it's a situation that they are far apart on the money that Dobbins wants versus what they want to pay, or if the Ravens are just being stubborn and saying, we just don't want to extend you at this point because we haven't seen you stay healthy frequently enough. A couple of those injuries are freak injuries. It isn't like he's getting banged up, missing a couple games, getting banged up, missing a couple games. He had a pretty severe knee injury. Last year when Dobbins was in the game, after he came back, the speed wasn't there. He had pretty good speed coming out of college. But it was the first year back. The vision was there. He could get past the first level and often past the second level. He just could get caught because the speed wasn't there. I'm in on J.K. Dobbins. I don't like that he's sitting out and, there's questions about, is it because he's injured or is it because of his contract? When I think we kind of know it's because of the contract. I think he'll be back. It's just a situation that warrants monitoring. And then on the other side of that offensive coin, the passing game, Jamison Hensley's reporting that OBJ and Zay Flowers have essentially grabbed the top two wide receiver spots. Seems that Rashad Bateman just can't shake the foot issue, and being out, I know he started to practice again. Zay Flowers makes me nervous because he's not big. I do tend to like bigger wide receivers, though this last draft cast gave us an awful lot of tiny receivers. OBJ, I've drafted. I've been fairly. I don't think aggressive is the word I want to say, but I haven't passed on him in the 13th round, 14th round of my best ball leagues, my underdog drafts. I think he just offers enough upside that if he has 2 games where he goes off, whether he gets injured or not, I don't think matters when you're playing best ball. I don't know how much is left there as far as his actual NFL career. The old saying, as my co-host on the Fantasy Football Roundtable and host of Campus to Canton on the Better Sports Network likes to say, once you mention the word retirement, you got one foot out the door. OBJ has started to talk about this might be his last year. I've never been a huge OBJ fan, and mostly because he does have a a fairly long injury history. But if he can stay healthy this year for half a season, 3/4 of a season, I think it really puts the Ravens in a strong position to transition into this new offense. Between Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, they've got a great and a pretty good couple of pass catching tight ends. I think J.K. Dobbins offers them a lot of explosiveness in the backfield. And then you add the moves that they've made at wide receiver to the guys that they already had. They've got Nelson Aguilar. He's a one-trick pony, but he's pretty good at the one trick that he does. OBJ, when he's healthy, is one of the better wide receivers in the league. Zay Flowers is coming on. If Bateman can get healthy, before he got injured last year, he looked pretty good. I don't think the Ravens are going to all of a sudden throw the ball 700 times, but I do like some of what they bring to the table in the passing game. Javonte Williams, everybody's All-American. Javonte Williams seems to be good to go. He isn't on the PUP list. They brought in Samaje Perine, and if we watched last year, we kind of know who and what Perine is. The fact that he's 8 or 9 years into his NFL career is pretty good on Samaje Perine. It shows that he's a grinder, but he's not real explosive. He's always been a short stepper going all the way back to Oklahoma. He's one of those guys that he's easy to bring down because he doesn't lift his knees real high. He's not the fastest guy, but he's consistent. He knows where to block. He knows who to pick up in the blitz. He can catch the passes. He can catch the ball well. He's probably a little above average on short yardage situations. So he makes a nice backup number 2 guy to a guy like Javonte Williams, who, if he can get back this year and provide some explosiveness by the end of the year, I think Williams is going to finish top 18 in the running backs. To me, I think that's a reasonable expectation. The last thing I want to talk about going through camp is the one, the only, Cooper Kupp. Coming back from injury, and lo and behold, pulls up with a hamstring. Now, I've been a big Cooper Kupp fan because the guy gets volume. And what do we want? We want volume. In Dynasty, we want to know that our player is going to get volume year over year. So if I draft him this year and he's on my team and he has a great year, he has 150 targets, is he going to get 150 targets next year? Or is he going to drop down to 90 because, they sign a free agent or, they add some hotshot rookie? Well, with Cooper Kupp, we know he's the top dog in Los Angeles. He's going to get the majority of the targets. He's going to, he's patient zero. He gets it. The ball is his. And then he pulls up with the hamstring. Well, coming off a leg injury, I don't think it's that uncommon. But what we did know, if you were listening to Sean McVay and you've watched him the last couple of years, you know that Cooper Kupp wasn't going to play in preseason anyways. McVay doesn't play his marquee guys in the preseason. Even though Stafford's coming back from a back injury, I don't expect to see Stafford this preseason. Cooper Kupp won't play. Aaron Donald isn't going to play. The Rams have said that they are not, who is it? Aaron Donald and Sean McVay said they did not come back to be in a rebuild. So they're looking at it as, what do they need to do to win? I like the Rams. I like the sentiment, but I don't know that they have the weapons. They need to. Their offensive line needed to give Stafford more time. If Stafford gets time, and Cam Akers gets room, then they can have a balanced offense. And Cooper Kupp will get his. Tyler Higbee, very underrated tight end, real good for fantasy. I like what Tyler Higbee does. Van Jefferson seems to have ascended to the number 2 role. Ben Skoranek seems to be a glorified fullback. He's somewhere on the field blocking. Maybe it's downfield for Cooper Kupp. Maybe it's running a jet sweep and blocking for Cam Akers. But Skoranek seems to be a guy that they like to have out there because he does all the dirty work. So to me, I'm not going to sweat Cooper Kupp. Though I got to be honest, and I don't know that I've drafted much of him in best ball because he was just going a little early. A lot of times, I had a lot of best ball drafts where I was in the back end, the back 3 or 4 picks. Kupp was going 6, 7, kind of right in front of me, 6, 7, or 8. And I just didn't end up in a position to be able to take a lot of shares. So let's see. Bubba's Eggs. What's up, fellas? Oh, he's got a Debbie question. Juice Wells from South Carolina could be a sleeper or riser on draft boards in 24. If Rattler turns it up, it'll be through Wells. Okay. So I haven't looked into Wells yet. Garrett and I did a way too early first round mock draft. I think we did 2 rounds. Probably been 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago. So Wells is somebody that we got to get on the radar, look a little deeper in. I do have my one Debbie draft coming up, and I have seen his name on there, and he's some guy that that is on my list to take a closer look at. The Buckeyes quarterback battle, Bubba, it seems like it's Kyle McCord's job to lose. So Devin Brown's a pretty good prospect. McCord was a pretty high level prospect coming in. The way that Brian Hartline has been able to recruit wide receivers has made it fairly easy for Ryan Day to bring in quarterback talent. Just some of it leaves before it gets the opportunity. And we saw Burrow go to LSU. We saw Ewers go back to Texas. I get it. Kids want to play. It's a tough sport. I think it's McCord's position to lose. And when you have Marvin Harrison and Emeka Ibuka, Cade Stover, Travion Henderson, I think it's pretty easy to be a good quarterback. So when I talk about quarterbacks that maybe they're not the Caleb Williams type, they're not the Anthony Richardsons, the CJ Strouds. They've been around a couple years. The guys that come to mind for me, and you may not have heard of either one of these guys, but one of the guys is Willie Tootin, and the other guy is Guy Benjamin. And so I get worried sometimes when you have wide receivers like Marvin Harrison and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Emeka Ibuka and Terry McLaurin. When you have wide receivers at that level, sometimes the quarterback, their game gets elevated. Edward mentioned when he was talking about TJ Hawkinson, or when he was talking about Dak Prescott, how the offense, much like Kirk Cousins, the players are lifting the quarterback isn't lifting the players. So Willie Tootin, he was the quarterback at Mississippi Valley State, and he was pretty highly regarded, put up a lot of numbers at Mississippi Valley State. The guy catching the ball from him was Jerry Rice. So Tootin went to the NFL and then disappeared. Guy Benjamin, pretty highly regarded. He was very productive in college. Came out of Stanford. His quarterback, or his wide receiver, was James Lofton. Lofton went on to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Benjamin had a cup of coffee as a backup, even though he was super productive. So I want to see what Kyle McCord can do. Can he put the team on his shoulders when they need it? We saw it with Terrell Pryor. I don't think Pryor had the tools to be an NFL quarterback, but in college, he was able to put the team on his shoulders when need be. Think we saw that with Justin Fields. We saw it with CJ Stroud. Now it's McCord's turn to prove it. So we're going to head into a break, and then we're going to bounce through this last half hour of the Dynasty Nerd Show on the Better Sports Network.
Better Sports Network. collectible moments.
Everybody up here at U.S. Cellular. Sox 5 runs, 6 hits. The 2-1 to Bartlett. Swing chop to short. Ramirez has it, throws. Bartlett picks the perfect game. His second no-hitter. People going crazy here at U.S. Cellular. He's mobbed by his teammates. A perfecto.
Now there's a steal by Bird. Underneath the DJ, lays it in. Right up, 1 second left. What a play by Bird. Bird stole the impounding pass. Laid it up to DJ. DJ laid it up and in. And Boston has a 1-point lead with 1 second left.
Out of the I formation on first down. Peterson to carry, looking for running room on the right side, has it to the 25, across the 30, across the 35, and out of bounds at the 40-yard line. Adrian Peterson has just gone over 2,000 yards for the season, the 7th man in NFL history to cross the 2,000-yard mark.
Well, a thundering ovation for number 66, Mario Lemieux.
Just the emotion I'm sure Mario is feeling in this place. You don't appreciate something until it's gone, and it's so great to have Mario back.
Yager turns around. Over to Lemieux. Mario Lemieux, his first goal in his comeback here tonight at the Mellon Arena. And the Penguins lead 3-0, and he is smiling like a butcher's dog. Mario Lemieux.
Oh, the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone. The Bears have scored, but the Bands are out on the field.
Pearson moves in front of the STP Dodge. Petty comes back to the inside. They almost touch as they move down low in the banking. They're going to be side by side as they exit the bank and head for the finish line.
Richard Petty goes back in front. They both spin. They're in the wall. Petty is sliding, slamming into the wall. He's coming down toward the finish line. Will he make it? Pearson is still running. The winner is car number 21. An amazing finish. Richard Petty's car demolished in the front end, as well as car number 21. An unbelievable finish, a terrible crash. David Pearson has won the Daytona 500. Leitner catches, comes down, dribbles, shoots, scores! Christian Leitner has hit the bucket at the buzzer! Pitched by Downing, swinging. There's a drive into left center field. That ball is going to be out of here. It's gone. It's 7-15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
The most valuable player is Magic Johnson. 42 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists. He starts at center, plays forward and guard, and leads the Los Angeles Lakers to a world championship 123-107 over Philadelphia.
Whether you collect sports memorabilia, fantasy championships, or winning bet slips, talk about it on Better Sports Network.
And we are back. And much like us, so is the NFL. The Cleveland Browns, the New York Jets should be a barn burner. We got Nick Chubb. We got Garrett Wilson. We got Aaron Rodgers. We got Deshaun. Wait a minute. We don't have any of those guys. John Kelly seems to be having a heck of a game, though. Four catches for 27 yards and a touchdown, 10 carries for 42 yards. So when he was coming out of college, I was watching John Kelly tape, and I had to go back, in the Dynasty Nerds film room in the Nerd Herd, we usually have for the top end rookies, incoming rookies, usually for about the top 50, we have anywhere from 3 to 8 or 9 of their college games cut up. We cut up every play that they're on the field for, not just their highlights. So whether they're blocking, if they're a receiver and they're running a route, we get a lot of all 22 tape, and we put that in. It's part of the Nerd Herd package. If you get the Dynasty GM bundle with the Nerd Herd, you can save even more money. It's a phenomenal tool that helps you. Once January rolls around and rookie season is getting here, and we're putting out rookie profiles and we're scouting and we got mock drafts dropping all the time. I was watching John Kelly, and some of his tape was just so good. He was a powerful runner. And, he just looks so good at Tennessee. And the fact that 5 years later, it seems like he's still in the NFL after he's literally he's a training camp hero. And to watch him have a good game tonight, I feel like he's giving himself an opportunity to be the RB3 for the Browns. They seem to be sold that Jerome Ford is the 2, and obviously Nick Chubb is the 1. But John Kelly he just keeps fighting for a chance, and he's been on the Browns now for, I don't know, this may be his 3rd season. He's been on their practice squad. He's been at the end of their roster and just fighting. In the passing game, they're giving Kellen Mond plenty of opportunity. 13 for 19 for a paltry 92 yards. So coming out, Kellen Mond is a pretty good athlete. I think he ends up not making the team. I think they're going to keep Josh Dobbs over him to back up Deshaun Watson, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson will be their QB3 developmental guy. Mond is a guy that has to see it before he can throw the ball. He doesn't have great anticipation. He has to see things happen. And looking at that yards per completion there, it's kind of playing out. That's exactly what it is. 92 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Zach Wilson did Zach Wilson things on the other side. 3 for 5. Looks like he didn't play a whole lot. Tim Boyle, 6 for 11, is who he is. Izzy Abanikanda scored a touchdown, 27 yards on 9 carries. Malik Taylor caught 1 long pass from Zach Wilson. That 57-yarder made up 50. That 57-yard pass made up 57 of Zach Wilson's 65 yards. So it's a Hall of Fame game, 16-14. At least there's some points scored. A couple guys that when you do Dynasty deep stash stuff, John Kelly is one of those guys where you're like, let me just throw him on the roster for a couple weeks and see if anything happens. And then somebody else flashes in week 2 and you're like, okay, get out of here, John Kelly. I'm going to pick up, somebody else. I was going to say Deneric Prince, but he's getting a lot of buzz right now in Kansas City, and it looks like he's pretty comfortably going to make the team in Kansas City. So we came out of the break, and now I just want to give thanks again to Dan and Edward for coming on and playing That's Debatable with me. I mentioned the Dynasty GM. It's a phenomenal tool that we have over at Dynasty Nerds. You can upload your teams, your Dynasty teams. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, Dennis, we're getting ready to start redraft season. My Dynasty teams, all I got to do is set the lineup. So unless you have a way to tell me who to set in my starting lineup, I don't think I need this. Well, those are just rankings. We have rankings. We do what we call as contender rankings. That means we want to win now. It doesn't figure in draft picks. Dynasty, when you're evaluating a Dynasty team, you include draft picks because they matter. They're a big asset. But if you go in and you hit the tab on the Dynasty GM and it says contenders, you can see how does your team compare if it was a redraft? How do you compare in the league analyzer against all the other teams in your league? Like you might have team 3 because you've got a ton of draft picks, but you take those out and you realize, well, the reason you have all those high draft picks is because your team is really the 11th ranked team in the league. So if you get a chance, go check out the Dynasty GM. So let's talk a little bit about trades. I feel like I can't substitute for Garrett if we don't talk trades. He gets trade requests, trade questions. Hopping in here, I'm going to take a look into our into the Nerd Herd Discord server. We get an awful lot of trade questions in there. So, see, we got 12-team super flex, tight end premium. Wants to move in to win this year. It's giving up Pittman and Rashee Rice for Debo and Amari Cooper. Is it too unbalanced? Is it fair? So if I'm trying to win now, I like getting Debo and Amari Cooper. You know, Pittman is a conundrum because he's got a rookie quarterback right now. I love Michael Pittman Jr. I think he's a great fantasy asset, probably top 30, top 24, maybe even top 20. But we just don't know what's going to happen with Anthony Richardson. How fast will he develop? One of the concerns with Richardson and Pittman, for that matter, is that Alec Pierce has a skill set that matches what Richardson does really well, which is throw the deep ball. Pierce matches that really, really, really good. Pittman gets downfield. He's a little more intermediate, not quite the deep threat that Alec Pierce is. Pierce has really, really good speed. If I have Debo and Cooper and you offer me Pittman and Rice, I got to be honest, I'm going to say no. I just don't think that's enough. Yeah, I think Debo is worth probably a late first, and Amari Cooper is probably worth at least 2 seconds. And I don't know if I rostered Amari Cooper. You know, the argument against Cooper is that he's getting up there in age, his contract is getting ready to run out. So the argument is like, what does his future look like if it's not in Cleveland? And that's a big unknown. I think Cooper is one of the best route runners in the league, but he disappears sometimes. So I think Cooper and Pittman are probably pretty evenly matched, which means there's a great big gap between Debo and Rashee Rice. So if I have Debo and Cooper and I'm rebuilding and you're offering me Pittman and Rice, I may want Pittman and a first, or Pittman, Rice, and 2 seconds. To me, that makes a lot more sense. Because if you're trading me Rice and Pittman for those 2 players, I'm probably not going to be a contender after I trade them. All right. Oh, Travis Kelce. You know, if you were here earlier, if not, go back to the app. You can re-listen to That's Debatable, where Edward and Dan discussed who their bets are for, you know, who they picked that's not Travis Kelce to finish as the tight end 1. So in a tight end premium, would you trade 2 firsts for Travis Kelce? If I had Travis Kelce, would I trade him for 2 firsts? I think Kelce still has at least 3 years of very, very high production left in him. You know, we've seen guys like Jimmy Graham. Kelce's similar in size to Jimmy Graham, maybe a couple inches, inch and a half shorter. But we've seen some of these guys, when they lose some of their athleticism, still be able to be very productive, solid red zone targets. You know, how big a drop is it from having him in? So 3 years from now, if Travis Kelce is still the tight end 1 on your team, but he's the actual tight end 8 in the NFL, that's still going to help your team win. So right now, I would probably, unless I felt very confident that one of those firsts was going to be in the top third of the draft. And honestly, at this point of the season, you don't have any kind of guarantee about that. So that's hard. So I would probably go 2 firsts and 2 seconds to give up Travis Kelce. I think selling him for 2 firsts, especially in a tight end premium league, is selling him low and yourself short. So we got a 10-team, start 10, super flex, PPR, no tight end premium. Kincaid, Dulcich, and a projected late 24 first for Mark Andrews and a 25 second. So Andrews is another interesting one because he's in his 6th year now. he has gotten banged up a little bit. Last year when he was out, we saw Isaiah Likely step in and fulfill the role in a pretty good manner. I like Isaiah Likely a lot. I like Mark Andrews more. I still think Andrews has some years in front of him. It's going to come down to how comfortable you feel about his situation. A new offensive coordinator putting in a new offense that theoretically is going to pass the ball more and use 2 tight ends in his college offense, though one of them, Darnell Washington, was primarily a blocker, and Brock Bowers does not athletically profile as similar to Andrews or Isaiah Likely. He's much more of an H-back profile physically, faster, smaller, 6'3", 240. But he's an exceptionally good athlete. Brock Bowers is. So moving Mark Andrews and getting 2 tight end, a rookie tight end in Dalton Kincaid. So I was not one drinking the Dalton Kincaid Kool-Aid. I like Kincaid. I think he's a decent enough tight end prospect, but I don't know that he's going to usurp Gabe Davis as the number 2 receiver in Buffalo. I don't know that he's going to usurp James Cook as the number 3 receiver. Cook seems to be really lighting it up on the receiving front. Then they got Khalil Shakir, who they were very high on. They've got some other receivers in Buffalo. Dawson Knox isn't just going to go away. Dawson Knox is probably going to play. If I had to guess, I'd say Dawson Knox plays, 65 to, if Dawson Knox plays 80% of the tight end snaps, I think that Dalton Kincaid plays 55 to 60%. That's a substantial amount of 2 tight end sets, but I don't know that Kincaid is going to just randomly out-target Dawson Knox, especially in year 1. Greg Dulcich, I like Dulcich. Dulcich is a candidate. We've seen Sean Payton make Jimmy Graham an exceptionally good tight end weapon and funnel the offense through 1 wide receiver and 1 tight end in Denver. That seems to bode well for where Greg Dulcich is. And a late 24 first, if I'm comparing it to this year, late, you're getting guys like Flowers, Sam Laporta, Jonathan Mingo, Will Levis, so guys like that were in the late first this year. Tank Bigsby, if you were running back hungry, you could get him there. Zach Charbonnet, probably more so as a late first than Tank Bigsby. And giving him up for a 25 second round pick and Mark Andrews. So I'm going to probably stick with Andrews. If I can give up that 24 first and 2 tight ends that may or may not be something for Andrews, that means I think I'm competing. I'm going for the title, and Andrews is a better shot of giving me that title than either of those other 2 tight ends. See, I'm a contender in a 10-team, 2-quarterback league. So I don't play in any 10-team leagues or 8-team leagues for that matter, and I'm not here to crap on them. What I am here to say is if you are in a 10-team league, do what they did and start 2 quarterbacks. Make the position worthwhile. 2 quarterbacks if you're in a smaller league. Heck, 2 tight ends for that matter. 10-team, 2-quarterback league. Start 3 wide receivers and 2 flex spots. He has Waddle as his wide receiver 4. Well, it's a 10-team league. Top 3 are Diggs, Lamb, and A.J. Brown. Also has DK and Mike Williams and Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I think the story here is he's got DK Metcalf as his wide receiver 5 and Mike Williams as his wide receiver 6. We're burying the lead here a little bit. Should he trade Waddle is the question. He doesn't think the value can go any higher and that his value is directly tied to Tua. So this is where you have to determine what you believe about what the Dolphins are going to do and what some of the Dolphins players are saying. And by some of the players, I mean Tyreek Hill. So if you believe Tyreek Hill is talking seriously about retiring in a couple seasons, I don't know, maybe if you believe that Tua can stay healthy and isn't going to miss, half a season each of the next 2 years because of concussions or get concussed in week 1 this year and end up deciding to retire. If you believe that those things aren't going to play out like that and that Tua is going to be there and that Hill is likely going to be done in a couple years, it makes sense to hold on to Waddle. The other side of that coin is that you've got a really stacked wide receiver room. I have some concerns. Diggs got pouty this year when the Bills made some overtures towards DeAndre Hopkins. Is that room for concern? Maybe, but we saw Diggs kind of push his way out of Minnesota, and Diggs is pushing 30. Maybe he's turning 30 this year. I know he's right around that age. So, not being an overly big wide receiver, that may or may not work to his advantage to extend him into his 30s. But I think if I had the choice between trading Diggs and trading Waddle, I think I would trade Diggs because of the age and hold on to Waddle. I get it. Waddle's success is tied to Tua, but Mike McDaniel, if Tua can't play, whoever is playing quarterback is going to have the same mission. Get the ball to Waddle and Hill. That's the mission of the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, as long as Mike McDaniel is their head coach. And McDaniel seems like he's got it together. They're not overspending, trying to cover what a lot of us perceive as a weakness at the running back position. They're literally saying, hey, 0 RB drafters, we agree with you. Running backs don't matter. So we're going to start this guy, Jeff Wilson, that was lightly regarded, and this guy, Raheem Mostert, that was lightly regarded. And then we're going to watch them have a great season. Oh, and if they don't work, we're going to throw this 165-pound rookie, Devin Achane, in there and let him do some stuff. Oh, and if that don't work, we've got this other 195-pounder, Salvon Ahmed. Let's just make him go. Oh, we still have Myles Gaskin. He can fill in a pinch and do exactly what we need. So I'm not overly concerned that offensive philosophy is going to change whether Tua is the quarterback or not. Will their execution of it change? Yeah, but ultimately, it's a get the ball out quickly to your playmakers offense. Tua and Tyreek are still going to continue to make plays. I think they're both high-end wide receivers, top 15 wide receivers. So I don't know that I would be stressing about getting rid of Tua. The guy, when I look at your list of wide receivers, guys I'd be looking to trade, and the reasons why, I'm looking to trade Stephon Diggs because he's older. And if I can get a haul for Stephon Diggs, I'm going to take it. I'm looking to trade A.J. Brown because A.J. Brown has that knee issue. And I'm looking to trade Mike Williams because he's a big wide receiver that has a tendency to not stay healthy. And it seems like they may have hired his replacement, and they're having Mike Williams train him this year in one Quentin Johnston. I think I would try to trade all 3 of those guys before I would try to trade Jalen Waddle. Sometimes I think it's easy for us to outsmart ourselves in fantasy football, in dynasty fantasy football, when we try to put together a great team. But I want to make sure that I'm helping you make good decisions and considering the whys of your trading. Now, if after all of this you determine I'm still going to trade Waddle because I'm scared of Tua, then I think that's great. That's a good decision for you. So go for it. So we're getting ready to come up on the end. We got a couple more minutes left, and I wanna close out with something. I kind of stole this from Julie Stewart Banks. You can go follow her on Twitter or X, whatever it is. But 3 good things to close out the show. So, the first thing, football's back. We have been living for it. We have been waiting with bated breath. We've been doing best ball drafts. We've been doing doing dynasty drafts, dynasty startups, dynasty rookie drafts. Now it's time to pump out some redrafts, get back with some old friends. And speaking of old friends, good thing number 2, don't forget why we play. We play because we're joining a league with people we don't know, and we want to make new friends. So be pleasant, be a good league mate, get back with your friends, have a good time. Don't be a jerk to people. Play good. Play to have fun, and don't forget why you're doing it. And my third good thing, I want to give a shout out to all the kids that are going back to college here in a couple of weeks. You got your whole life in front of you. You got work to do. It's a fun time of year. I'm getting ready to move my son into Ohio State for his freshman year. It's just up the street. It's not far away, but I get to watch him continue to grow into a young adult. It's a phenomenal time to be alive, I think. Have a great night. Check me out on Twitter at culture_coach and on the Fantasy Football Roundtable.